morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are honored this morning to have a very special speaker. Details of his background are in the program along with the abstracts. I won't go into a great deal of detail. Tom Beardon has an extensive background in physics, nuclear engineering, weapons system. He's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army. He's been one of our most popular speakers. He has published many, many books. There are several of them in the bookstore here at the conference. His topic today is Action at a Distance, the Fundamental Mechanisms of Radionics. Please welcome Tom Beardon.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be back with the USPA. Actually, I think the first meeting here was something like '78 at Oglethorpe University. And that was the first time that I attended a USPA conference. Of course, over the years, many of the people at USPA have become, very fast friends. So it's just like coming home to come back to USPA every year and give a presentation. And I really do feel at home, and I'm glad to see all of you, and I hope you're all having a good conference and have been able to see some excellent speakers that have been scheduled for you this year. For my subject this year, I'd like to turn to radionics. Actually, the USPA started off as an idea in the brain of Jerry Gallimore, and it started off as the U.S. Radionics Congress, the first year, which I did not attend. But it started in the field of radionics. And fortunately, the absolute forefront of physics in an area in which only about 100 physicists in the world work in is now at a point where we can now begin to put together an actual physics mechanism to explain radionics. And that's what I'm going to do to the best of my ability, or try to do here today for you. So if we can have a change in slide, we'll get started. First of all, one of the great inspirations of my life early on was Thomas Galen Hieronymus and the Hieronymus device, which needs no explanation to this audience, a radionics device. This was the early one in his patent, and I got interested in it because of the fact that he could detect the different elements. And at the time, I wasn't interested in this kind of stuff. I was out in El Paso in the West, and I was doing a lot of rock climbing and mountain climbing and looking for buried treasure and some of the old Spanish stuff. And I needed a way to identify gold in outcroppings that were very difficult to get to up in the mountains. And I hit upon a possibility of maybe being able to adapt one of these things to do that. And I saw an article by John Campbell, of course I'm sure all of you are familiar with that article, which really just inspired me no end. That there really was a different kind of energy. The human nervous system could sense it. We may not know what it was in terms of physics, but it was real. It was a matter then of learning the phenomenology and learning how to deal with it. Little did I know what a long thing that was going to put me on, but that's what I got started in, trying to find a metal detector based on a Hieronymus machine. I never did get that metal detector, by the way, but it got me into an awful lot of other things, and of course, I'm happy to say a lot of other people got into radionics too, and that's why we're all here. Next slide. I want to point out, however, something from the absolute forefront of modern physics, that reality is not at all as simple as we've all been led to believe over the last several hundred years. As a matter of fact, if we believe what physics today, forefront physics, has to say about physical reality, it's very strange. I'd like to talk about that just a little bit. First of all, the vacuum, the emptiness itself, is not empty. It is a plenum. A little particle will form out of nothing. This is quantum mechanics. This is not Tom Beardon. It will form out of nothing, and it may be hotter than a firecracker, and then almost instantly it will disappear. It's continually being created and annihilated. And that's called a virtual particle. It's virtual because it happened so fast and then disappeared again that you couldn't grab it and look at it, what's called observable. But if you have enough of them doing this and they're boiling away all the time, that's called electric charge when it's photons. Actually, in the vacuum, we have continuous creation and annihilation of every kind of particle or whatever you could think of in the world. And it's at such an incredible rate that it defies human imagination. We use numbers just to guess at it as, 10 to the 200th or something like that times a second in 1 cubic centimeter. But the numbers are meaningless because they're so large. Essentially, it's infinite. The fact is, however, that it's real. There are experiments that show these little critters, these little ghost critters, really do exist, and the vacuum's really built that way. It has been experimentally established, in spite of the fact that 90% of the physicists still don't believe it. It's true. Now, the other thing that happens is assemblages of these critters form. For example, just for a moment, you had the assemblage that just happened to get right for gold, for a gold atom. The next moment, you might have an iron atom, for example. The next moment, you might have a molecule of some kind. And hold on to your hat, the next moment, and this is a little beyond quantum mechanics, you could have a living, breathing being form for an instant, and then gone. Everything, every possible combination that is possible is forming all the time in the vacuum and disappearing all the time. They call these ghost forms, and most quantum mechanics foundations people do not like to talk of them because it's horrible. Now you're talking about the density of reality. Because everything suddenly became real, it's only how dense it is. And if you take a ghost form and you were to increase the energy in that form would eventually materialize. And that's just an extension of ordinary quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics, however, is totally insane, to quote Richard Feynman. Nonetheless, you do have ghost forms, and this changes the idea of reality. Reality is not a brick. It's not solid at all. You have an unlimited number of forms of a very ethereally thin density, but not zero, all the time, everywhere.